Hello everyone and welcome back to my beginner series. Today we're going to talk about markers. So we've talked about stamps and we've talked about ink pads, and so we know that we're going to ink our stamp up and transfer it over to a piece of paper so that we have a beautiful image. Well, sometimes we want to color those images. That's right, and to color those images we need markers, and we have two types of markers. We have a water-based marker and we have an alcohol type marker. So I'm going to show you the difference in the two markers and what you can do with them and how you can color them and the different results that you can achieve. All right, so let's get started. So the first, I'm going to show you the differences here in the two markers. So I have an alcohol marker here over to my left, and you can see our alcohol marker is kind of a little bit blockier, right? And when you purchase the alcohol marker, it comes in a light and dark marker. This happens to be dark polished pink, and this is going to be the light polished pink. The idea behind this marker is it's going to allow you to blend beautifully. Then we have over here a Stampin Write marker, as we call it, and the Stampin Write markers, they are a water-based marker. And so the water-based markers, they don't necessarily blend as beautifully as these alcohol markers. They're kind of for a different purpose. Now, when you're using these two markers, you definitely want to take note that you want to make sure that you use the appropriate black. So StazOn Black is going to be the ink, the solvent ink that you're going to want to use, the permanent ink that is waterproof, with our water-based markers, and I've already done that and stamped my image. Over here is our Memento Black, and Memento Black is perfect for our alcohol markers. And so if you're going to stamp an image in black, as I've done here, you want to make sure that you do it in Memento Black so that you can color with these markers. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to move these guys aside, and we're going to start right off with our Stampin' Write markers. So the cool thing about these markers are, you can color on your stamps with these markers. That's right. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and pull in another pink. So here's another pink. This is Flirty Flamingo. And these Stampin' Write markers, you can see there's like a thin band. So that's going to show you that it's, this kind of thin point edge. And then if you notice the thicker band, that's going to signify this kind of brush end, right? And so when you're coloring, when you color with your Stampin' Write marker, which is a water-based marker, you can see if I go back over how I can get that uneven lines and sort of an uneven effect. So sometimes that's okay, right? Because that's, these markers are not necessarily meant for blending, but you can color an image in using these markers, but you would have to kind of keep moving, right? But you can see you kind of get some of those little streaks and different lines in there. So if I were to color this flower, I would have to kind of be careful. I wouldn't be able to blend necessarily because that's not what the purpose of these markers as far as blending goes. You can't really blend with these markers, so I'm not going to get the two-tone effect, but I am going to get, a nice colored image. So one of my favorite things with the Stampin' Write markers is that you can color on your stamps, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. I have a stamp here, and it says, "Hope you have the best birthday." It's one stamp. So if I took a stamp pad and I inked this up, ink, and stamped it, it would be one color. But the nice thing is when you have Stampin' Write markers, you can actually color on your stamps. That's right. So I would start with my lightest color first, just so that I don't accidentally get the darker color on my marker tip. So I'm just coloring on my stamp. This is the best birthday is what I would like to be. I'd like this to be my polished pink. So I'm just kind of adding the polished pink over the best birthday. Then I would like to take my evening evergreen and I would like to color the bottom portion of my stamp. Or as I should say, maybe that's the top portion, right? So I'm just kind of adding color to the top. And so then what we do is we kind of huff on it, yeah, and kind of get it moist. And then you're going to turn it over and stamp it straight down and straight up. And now you can see I took one stamp and I've added 2 colors to that stamp, and therefore I've been able to stamp it in the 2 colors. Otherwise, I would have had to have inked it up twice and maybe cut and pasted it together a wee bit. So that is one of my favorite things about my Stampin' Write markers, is that I can color on my stamps. I can color on my photopolymer stamps. I can color on my rubber stamps using these markers. So it really allows me a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our alcohol markers, and we'll look at the difference in the two. So let's bring our alcohol markers back in. Remember, when we're stamping an image that we're going to color, we need to use our Memento black, and then I've got another sheet here for some blending. So I have a light and dark polished pink, and so one of the nice things for your alcohol markers is when you color, you get this really nice, smooth, even coloring look. Then if you take a lighter marker, or you could do it reverse, you could start with the lighter one. But the cool thing is check this out. When I start to blend into that dark line and kind of blend up, do you see that harsh line go away? And it transition or gradates, into another beautiful color. And so that is what I love about my Stampin' Blends, is that it allows you, the alcohol markers allow you to get really creative in your blending, in your highlights, in shadows when you're coloring different images. And so there I just added a bit of dark. Then I would take my light and do a little bit of some swirlies to kind of, break down that harsh line. And then you can kind of color it out to the edges. Now we do have a color lifter as well, which you can kind of come back in and lift up some color if you want. One of the nice things about the Stampin' Blends is you can go back in and you can add some more dark in there. And you can kind of keep going back and forth until you get that achieved, lights and darks and shadows that you're looking for. So that is our Stampin' Blend markers. They are absolutely wonderful. They come in a lot of different colors, but they're not in all of our colors, but you can absolutely, mix some different pinks, and you can grab different color blues. You could do Pool Party and Bermuda Bay, and you could mix some of those different colors. It's not going to hurt your alcohol marker, and what you can achieve is so beautiful. So let me show you this, just kind of a fun card a background that I started. And so, I have some raspberry, and I actually just took a bunch of different color, Highland Heather, some different purples and things, and just kind of made this fun background. Check out that background. And so, this was with the alcohol markers, and, you touch, on another line, and it's not going to hurt anything at all. With the alcohol markers, you will notice a bleed. That's right. So you'll notice that it does bleed through your cardstock, and that is perfectly normal. So this happens to be a thick white cardstock, so I'm not worried about my surface. But if you have a normal basic white, you would want to protect your surface with another piece of paper or some grid paper or something like that underneath. Okay, so let's move these aside, and let's bring back in our Stampin' Write markers, and let's look at the two different coloring. So check this out. Do you see the two difference? This is a nice soft shade, and then this one, because of the type of marker, it's not meant to blend. So it is meant, for coloring, but it's also meant for coloring on your stamps. So those are those two examples. Now let's take a look. This is our Stampin' Blend, and you can see we can blend the colors. And this is our Stampin' Write marker. Now the Stampin' Write marker allowed us to color on our stamps. So we have a two-tone sentiment there. But you can totally see the differences in the blending of those two markers. So that's pretty much the ins and outs of your coloring, of your Stampin' markers. You've got those Stampin' Blends, and then of course you have those Stampin' Write markers, which are water-based. And as you're getting started, the most important thing to think about is, number one, do I want to blend or do I just want to color the image? Which color black should I use? You definitely want to use the right color black for your outlined image, because if you don't, if you use the wrong one, it might blend on you, it might get into your marker. You don't want that. So make sure if you're using a Stampin' Blend alcohol marker, you use that Memento Black. And if you're using a Stampin' Write marker, which is water-based, then you go StazOn all the way, right? So those markers are so much fun, and color on your stamps with those Stampin' Write markers. I love to color on my stamps. One of the other reasons I love it so much is if maybe I don't have all of the colors in the palette, but I do have the markers. Well, now I've got the option to, make an image green if I have an evening evergreen marker. So that is an option for you as well. Very easy to clean. They are like our classic stamp pads. You would just use some Stampin' Mist or maybe the simple chamois and just clean it right off. So really easy to clean and beautiful results when you do that. So I hope that helps you understand the difference of our two markers. They're a lot of fun, and don't be afraid to try those Stampin' Blends. Once you get using them, you'll start to get a feel for how they blend. And just, honestly, just practice. Practice, practice, practice. You can't practice enough. That's exactly right. And, and there's nobody knows what it's supposed to look like, and it doesn't have to be perfect. No, it doesn't. Nobody knows what it's supposed to look like. So most importantly, stamp an image and get coloring, all right? Thank you for joining me today. Take care.